Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. First and foremost, guys, I want to say welcome. I hope you're all still healthy. I hope you're all doing okay. I'm your host, Marcus Vargas, and guys, the 2020 NFL Draft finally came and finally went, and it was definitely interesting. I felt like, it was certainly one of the deeper drafts that we've seen in recent memory. It felt like, every time any team sort of was making a pick, I was like, oh, it's a solid pick for them there. That's a solid pick for them there. It just felt like there were a lot of quality players with a lot of potential to become starters in the league. Now, of course, we're going to talk rookies and their fantasy football projections, and we're going to talk winners and losers from the draft. Excuse me. But, guys, I want to start talking about what certain teams did, some moves that were either really good or really bad, and I want to open with the bad because honestly, these teams definitely shocked me on draft night. I definitely didn't see them going in this direction, and I think it has unfortunate implications for fantasy football. So to start, guys, I want to start with the Green Bay Packers. It seemed like the shock of the night. The Green Bay Packers move up to select quarterback Jordan Love. Now, guys, I can see, people want to justify this move by saying, they did it before with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and they're planning for the future, et cetera, et cetera. But, guys, this move makes zero sense to me at all. Because there are such glaring needs at other spots on the roster, particularly wide receiver. To me, what this move says is we aren't really caring about winning right now with Aaron Rodgers. We're investing in the future, and whatever. And I have to imagine that this is going to cause a lot of tension between Aaron Rodgers, the franchise, the coach. I don't see Aaron Rodgers being that great of a mentor to Jordan Love. I do think that Jordan Love can learn a lot from watching this guy play up close. Aaron Rodgers is a phenomenal quarterback, but he's not going to happily usher this new wave in when I think, what is he, 36 years old? He has a lot of time left. Not to mention, guys, the Packers didn't draft a wide receiver at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. Also, to move on, their second pick was running back A.J. Dillon. Do they not have Aaron Jones? Were they not satisfied? I'm pretty sure off the top of my head that Aaron Jones led the league in touchdowns last season, at least rushing touchdowns. So to me, this makes no sense whatsoever at all. I mean, I get it. A.J. Dillon can serve an every down role, but wide receiver, to me, it's silly at this point. And they finally select a tight end in the third round. That is a need for them. They needed a tight end. However, if you weren't selecting one of the top tight ends, I don't know about this pick either. They start drafting defense. They got a linebacker. They got some linemen, which is good, and a safety late in the seventh round. So at that point, you figure that those guys are going to be role players. They're not figured they don't figure to be, starters immediately. They're more of projects, things of that nature. So the Packers draft to me really was not very good. I felt that they should have been addressing the wide receiver issues very early in the draft, and then maybe gotten a linebacker in the second round. To me, the players and the talent that they passed on to get Jordan Love, to get A.J. Dillon, just didn't make sense to me. And guys, for fantasy football, it definitely does not help Aaron Rodgers whatsoever. I was hoping, we would get some good news, some good stock going up after this draft, but the Packers seem to be more concerned with their future after Aaron Rodgers, rather than winning right now. And the unfortunate reality is that Aaron Rodgers still has plenty of game left. I mean, he's made it clear. I'm pretty sure he wants to play till he's at least 40. So that's still, 4 more years? He's on contract, I think, till 2022 or 2023. So it doesn't make sense to me. Now, of course, the theories and the rumors are going to begin swirling that, Aaron Rodgers could be out of Green Bay in the next couple of years. And a lot of people are saying, or some people are saying at least that, that's not the case, that Jordan Love will sit behind him. However, do you trade up in the first round to have a quarterback sit for 3 to 4 years? I'm not sure. I really am not sure, especially a quarterback who's being compared to the Super Bowl MVP Patrick Mahomes. Guys, it doesn't really add up. And it's an unfortunate reality that sometimes teams try to do the bolder thing and just go get, quote-unquote, their guy, rather than just getting, immense talent and what they need there. And, of course, we look at it now and, we give our opinions because that's our job. And should Jordan Love be the next Patrick Mahomes, we'll all look silly. But as of right now, what we know, what we've seen from Jordan Love, this pick was very, very shocking. You have a, transcendental quarterback on your team. Yes, he doesn't have the best, personality or leadership traits, but when he goes out there and he plays football, he's amazing at what he does. So, pick I didn't really understand. Also, now for the running back, to me, this just gives less value to Aaron Jones. Potentially going to have some touches taken from him. A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, I can imagine, sharing the backfield with Jamal Williams as well. Of course, in fantasy football, we don't like running back by committee. So that to me was a negative as well. Hated the Packers draft, if that wasn't clear. Now, I want to move on to the Philadelphia Eagles, guys. I have to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles because it feels like every Eagles fan I talk to is not in a good state right now. First round pick, Jalen Reagor instead of Justin Jefferson. I feel a lot of people expected the Eagles to go for Justin Jefferson here. And I understand, the reasoning behind picking Reagor. They wanted a speedster, a guy who could fly. However, the Eagles just had an issue with receivers dropping balls. And they drafted a receiver who had the third lowest catch rate in the FBS. Of course, he's fast, but it just feels like to me that everyone's looking for the next Tyreek Hill or the next Mecole Hardman because they saw the Chiefs, fly around with all these gadget guys and speedsters that can take the top off the defenses. But do you have Patrick Mahomes? I know this is a copycat league and everyone tries to replicate what everyone else is doing. However, Patrick Mahomes is a once-in-a-generation kind of talent. Tyreek Hill's speed, it's not just about speed. Remember, John Ross broke the 40-yard dash record, came into the league, has battled with injuries, and has never really flourished into a complete receiver. So, you have to take the good with the bad. You can't just look at all of the good. Jalen Reagor, he has big play potential, and he's certainly, he's not a scrub. But I think, Justin Jefferson, the more complete wide receiver here, the bigger guy, the more physical, I think that would have been a much better pick for the Philadelphia Eagles right now, because, I just think the more complete guy was a better pick here. Of course, Justin Jefferson then falls to the Minnesota Vikings, which for them was a solid pick after losing Stephon Diggs, and he sort of serves as their replacement. The Eagles, Then we later find out that they trade for Marquise Goodwin. Now, to me, it makes me a little bit more perplexed as to why they wouldn't select Justin Jefferson. You don't just have your eyes on a player, instantly. There had to be interest there for Marquise Goodwin for some time now after the 49ers announced they were shopping him, and the Eagles had interest. So if you had interest in that speedster, who, guys, is 30 years old, then why not take the more complete guy to complement that guy? Marquise Goodwin, just to talk about that trade, Marquise Goodwin hasn't played a full season in a couple of years now, and he's never eclipsed 1,000 yards. I don't think he's going to be getting any better at 30 years old. He just missed the entirety of last season with an injury. I don't like this trade. I don't think this does enough. The Eagles definitely did not do enough to tackle what needs they have on their football team. Like the Packers, this team thought they would make a bold move by selecting a quarterback. This quarterback selection was definitely worse than the Packers. And I think, a lot of people are making a big deal about the Packers move because they traded up in the first round. But I'm sorry, the Jalen Hurts pick was not wise here. Now, I understand the Eagles, the backup quarterback position there, it's highly touted. It's definitely a prestigious position after what Nick Foles did. And it makes sense. You get your insurance. But you get your insurance guy in rounds 5, 6, and 7. You get a guy who might be a project, a guy, you need to develop a bit. Jalen Hurts, to me, in the second round, was we're probably expecting Carson Wentz to get hurt. Let's get an athletic guy that we think could be a prominent starter. A guy we can work on. Of course, he has things he needs to work on. But to me, this was more about having a potential high quality starter rather than just an everyday backup. A lot of people are going to be yelling, Carson Wentz just signed this mega deal. Carson Wentz is young. And the only reasoning I can see behind this pick is that Carson Wentz is going to get hurt, and they want a high quality starter so they can help them win now. But it's just a weird mentality to be in, right? It's like if Miami drafted Tua Tagovailoa and they used their next pick on another quarterback to be his backup. It doesn't really make any sense to me. Especially you had someone like J.K. Dobbins on the board at that point, and they passed on him for a quarterback. I understand they have Miles Sanders, but J.K. Dobbins is a fierce runner of the football, guys. And I think, just sometimes you just need to draft the talent that is there. I think the Packers and the Eagles, certainly losers of the draft. I don't think these additions make any immediate impact. And yeah, it was just disappointing to see because I root for the Eagles. I live in Philadelphia. Even though I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I do root for the Eagles because they're the hometown team, and I've watched them play a lot growing up, so I want to see them succeed. This draft, I think they just had the wrong mentality about their picks, but I could be wrong. Of course, that's the business. So with that, guys, we're going to take a short break. And when we get back, we're going to talk more about the draft, more about the rookies, rankings, winners, losers, etc., etc. So stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Alrighty, welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, guys. We're going to continue here with our draft recap / talking, and I want to move on to some teams that just kind of wowed me with their draft. Now, the team I want to start with here, guys, is the Baltimore Ravens. I think it's pretty evident that the Baltimore Ravens have one of the best drafts in the NFL, and mostly it's because they just filled the few holes that they had on their defense and drafted one of the top running backs in this class. If you were to look at the Ravens roster prior to this draft, the significant holes were at linebacker. You could argue that they definitely needed a wide receiver because after Marquise Brown, there's nothing to write home about. Now, their first pick they used on Patrick Queen, which was to me was a great pick. I expected him to go a bit earlier in the draft, but to me, this is basically they drafted their next C.J. Mosley. Also, according to ESPN, Baltimore has now drafted 3 linebackers in the first round. The other 2 were Ray Lewis and C.J. Mosley, so that's definitely good company to be in. They seem to have an eye for linebackers in the first round. Later on, they drafted J.K. Dobbins, the running back from Ohio State, who many people touted as one of the top 3 running backs in the class. I was very surprised he didn't go earlier here, and I was also surprised that the Eagles decided to pass on him. To me, what this says to me, though, is that perhaps Lamar Jackson won't be running the ball as much as people thought. So this is definitely something to keep your eye on, guys. If you're drafting this kind of running back, you don't need to draft a running back in the first round for him to be an every down kind of guy. A lot of people think, running backs come and go and it's an undervalued position at the draft. You don't need to sort of sell the whole house and empty your bank account for a running back. But this one here says to me that they're definitely planning on leaning on running backs more often, right? Mark Ingram's only getting older. I believe he's 30 now, or will be 30 when the season starts. And, this says something more to me as well, because I've spoken highly of Gus Edwards, and I know the team thinks highly of him. He's a great running back, very efficient. So the fact that they went out and grabbed another only says to me that they're going to be focusing on their run game just as much as they were last season, but maybe lean more towards using running backs rather than Lamar Jackson. I expressed this concern a while back, one of these episodes, because, I figured the Baltimore Ravens understand that Lamar Jackson's, all of that, the record breaking and his prowess in the run game is unsustainable and could lead to serious injury, because Lamar Jackson definitely is not sliding first. He is a guy who's going to run into contact. He's going to try and juke someone out, spin move. And if you guys remember, Jimmy Garoppolo a few years ago tried to spin move against the Kansas City Chiefs, and he tore his ACL, missed the entire season. So I'm not saying Jimmy Garoppolo is as athletic as Lamar Jackson. Of course he isn't. But, you just don't want to take those unnecessary risks. So this pick here was outstanding. Next, with the 71st pick in the draft, Justin Madubuike from Texas A&M. I thought some people had him going early second round, possibly in the first round. And the Ravens got him here on day 2. This is an excellent pickup. Sure, they're doing a lot to shore up the run defense because even though their defense was pretty solid last year, their run defense was pretty bad. I believe they allowed definitely more than 4 yards per carry. I think it was around 4.4 yards per carry, which is pretty surprising because, people, we all usually think of the Baltimore defense as elite all around, but their run defense, it showed in the Tennessee Titans game, was not where it needed to be. They did a great job in this draft, guys, and I think, if you were drafting, you're looking at Baltimore's defense to draft, definitely think of them as a top 3 defense because their defense really doesn't have many holes, if any, at this point in time. They also grabbed another linebacker late, and they grabbed a wide receiver that can help. He can possibly play in the slot, help out Lamar Jackson a bit there. So I think overall, the Ravens had such a solid draft. They're definitely going to be in contention for the Super Bowl yet again. Their team is very, very scary. So we'll have to see. Of course, guys, with all these rookies, you can just, any of them could be busts, right? We all know that, but we're not just going to assume that. We're going to take them for the talent they put on the tape and for where they're valued. Now, the next team that had an excellent draft, guys, the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I think I could really just stop here. Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor. Those, to me, were 2 huge value picks on day 2, and they were very, very solid picks. A lot of people, there was a lot of buzz surrounding Michael Pittman. They need wide receivers. And, people have compared Michael Pittman Jr. to Juju Smith-Schuster. They timed similarly in the 40-yard dash. And, Jonathan Taylor, he sort of speaks for himself. He had an excellent combine. He's hyper productive now. Of course, the concern with him was a lot of wear and tear. And honestly, I figured they wouldn't draft a running back because they have Marlon Mack. But this pick here, Jonathan Taylor could definitely spring into a top 15 kind of running back behind that Indianapolis Colts offensive line should they go with him instead of Marlon Mack. Now, which actually surprised me because I thought Jacob Eason might go earlier, and there was some buzz around him possibly going to the Patriots. Picking up Jacob Eason was very, very good because some people thought he would go much earlier than they did. They got him in the 4th round, and right now they have Phillip Rivers. There's no reason that he needs to be, this is what I was talking about earlier. When you get a guy who's going to be a project kind of guy, you're going to try and build him up. He's going to sit behind the quarterback for a few years. You get him in the middle to late rounds. You don't trade up in the 1st round for him, right? So this right here was a sort of that scenario that I would imagine for the Packers and Eagles if they wanted to get a backup quarterback. But this here was a snag. Definitely a great value pick. Definitely a smart pick. I think, we have to remember, guys, before Andrew Luck retired, I certainly, and people were certainly talking about the Colts as a playoff threat. They had a really, really solid roster all around. They had good depth, and I think, had Andrew Luck stayed on that team, we might have been talking about them making a deep playoff push. So, their draft was certainly a good one, and we have to remember, they got DeForest Buckner during the free agency period, and I think they're only going to improve. Definitely a threat for the playoffs. So the Colts had a very, very good draft. Among, like I said, a lot of people had a good draft, but these were the ones that really stuck out to me. Now, another interesting, let's just talk about an interesting selection that stuck out to me was the CeeDee Lamb pick for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, this one was certainly a shocker. I really did not think CeeDee Lamb would slip this far. And actually, let me just address this here, guys. Man, I could not have been more wrong with my predictions, my wishes, and I'll own up to that definitely. I figured we would see definitely some more veteran guys being traded on draft day. After the draft was over, reports were that the Jags didn't even get offers for Yannick Ngakoue. Leonard Fournette wasn't moved. The only one who was moved that I spoke about was Marquise Goodwin. and that wasn't even one I really cared too much about because I don't think he's that much of an impact guy right now. But the Dallas Cowboys CeeDee Lamb pick was definitely something, it's the player of value, having the talent on the board there, you take it. But the Dallas Cowboys still have, the gigantic hole, that, Travis Frederick is leaving. They could have selected, I know there weren't as many top corners left at that position, but, they need corners. And they did get Trayvon Diggs, but, people weren't as high on him as someone like, Jeff Gladney, et cetera, et cetera. Now, they did get Neville Gallimore, but, I think at this point in time, focusing on the bigger holes was better for Dallas because earlier on because, they have Amari Cooper. They have Michael Gallup. There really was no need for CeeDee Lamb. But this does, it is definitely a plus for fantasy football for us. I'm just looking at this more as I'm looking at this more of a whole, more of a general type thing. The Dallas Cowboys didn't need to get receiver here. They were just so giddy and happy on camera that CeeDee Lamb had slipped. And once CeeDee Lamb slipped that far, I knew for sure Dallas was taking him. Definitely disappointed because, I thought a team like the Eagles should make an aggressive move up to go get a guy like CeeDee Lamb. And they have the need there. But the Dallas Cowboys might be just having a luxury of riches on offense and really be suffering again like they did last season. I don't think they really paid attention or learned from their mistakes last season. That led to an 8-8 season. They had, the number one offense in the NFL, and they went 8-8. So getting a guy like CeeDee Lamb, yes, it's great, it's cool, it's awesome. You get this talented, very talented guy, but you did not need that at all. It's sort of like the Jordan Love pick. It's sort of like the Jalen Hurts pick. Yes, it's cool. You get a big name kind of guy with buzz, but I think this wasn't the wisest pick that the Dallas Cowboys could have made. But great for Dallas fans, great for fantasy football. I think Dak Prescott certainly gets some added value from having CeeDee Lamb as well. They have such a good receiving core in Dallas right now. Definitely one of the best in the NFL. But with that, guys, we're going to take a short break now because time is almost up here. When we get back, we'll keep talking draft, guys, some other big things that happened that I wasn't expecting, some trades that I liked, and we'll talk rookie value, fantasy football, all that good stuff. So stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back after this short break.
I want to talk to you guys about this amazing product I've been using lately called Hydrant. If you're like me and you want to kick the coffee habit, but you're worried about your energy levels depleting, to avoid the morning sluggishness and that midday slump, you need to make sure you're hydrated. It's super important. And that's where I've been using Hydrant. And for 25% off your first order, you can go to drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC at checkout. Hydrant is basically flavored electrolyte packets you mix directly into your water to make hydrating your body easy and delicious. And what I love about Hydrant, it's backed by research. The formula was developed by Oxford scientists to provide perfectly balanced, efficient hydration. Again, that's drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC for 25% off your first order. Another really cool thing about Hydrant, there's no synthetic colors or artificial sweeteners. The formula is vegan and you can choose between 3 different flavors or a variety pack. So for all my vegan friendly fellows out there, this one's for you. Again, this is drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, guys, welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Now, I think at some point today, I might as well do it now. We have to talk about my Kansas City Chiefs. All right, the first running back came off the board in the first round. And it was something I talked about that I wanted, and, one of my wishes did come true. I wanted the Chiefs to draft a running back in the first round. I said, screw the defense. We'll just put points up on the board. Teams won't be able to catch us. Let's draft a running back, one of these top guys, possibly, Jonathan Taylor, maybe DeAndre Swift, because I knew that those guys would be there at that point. Now, we got to pick 32, and I was getting nervous, because I thought maybe Miami would take a running back, one of the top guys. And we get to our pick, and the selection is in, and with the 32nd pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Kansas City Chiefs select Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back from LSU. So this one was very, very interesting, and I actually didn't expect the pick to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire here, but, it made so much sense to me after getting over the initial shock. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is arguably the best pass-catching running back coming out of this draft class. He's super shifty. He has great vision. And Brett Veach told Andy Reid, I want you to watch some of this guy's tape. Let me know who he reminds you of. I think you might see some Brian Westbrook. Andy Reid watched some of his tape, and he gets back to him, and he says, this kid's better than Brian Westbrook. And, that says something, speaking that highly of him, because, Brian Westbrook had some very good years when he was with the Eagles and was very, very productive. So, if he thinks that he could be better than Brian Westbrook, I will definitely take that because, guys, I love Damian Williams. He helped save the Super Bowl. He helped put that on ice. But during the regular season, he wasn't the guy. He wasn't that guy. None of our running backs showed that they could take over and be a number one. We need a guy, the concerns with Clyde Edwards-Helaire were, having that, the big speed to finish off an explosive play and have those long runs. But, he had some explosive, long runs where he blew by defenders. It's not as consistent as some other guys, but he has the ability to do that when he has to. I think, he has excellent vision and he can make plays happen even when the blocking isn't that good. Never mind the fact that he's a great pass catcher. That's exactly what we needed. In this offense, even when you think we should be running the ball, we're going to be passing the ball. The Kansas City Chiefs sort of just used short passes as their run game, right? And so to get a guy who's great at pass catching right now and doesn't have to work on it is great for us, and it's great for fantasy football managers, guys. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think, if he can end up in a situation like Kareem Hunt, where he just gets thrown into the fire, I think can be a top fantasy football running back in his first year as a rookie. Certainly in the top 20, definitely with the potential to be in the top 15, which would be great. He can be an RB2 kind of flex kind of guy. And in PPR, guys, if he's just getting catches, then that's easy money in the bank. So I loved this pick by the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, experts and those ESPN analysts are going to say, they should have gone corner here. They should have addressed the defense. But you have to remember the Kansas City Chiefs just won a Super Bowl with the defense they have. So, always keep that in mind. Of course, Kendall Fuller, we did lose. But Reggie Ragland wasn't much of a contributor in the first place. Kendall Fuller, of course, he was an amazing slot corner for the Redskins, but never really got back to that production when he was on the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they certainly have the potential to fill that hole. They drafted L'Jarius Sneed. Willie Gay, that linebacker, will certainly replace Reggie Ragland. I think, of course, there were the off-the-field issues that people were concerned with, and, he potentially had hurt his quarterback on his own team. But reports were that story was overblown, and it wasn't as serious as people were making it. And, I think it's kind of perfect, right? Andy Reid is that guy that gives people second chances. Tyreek Hill had off-the-field issues. Andy Reid took a chance on him, helped develop him into an outstanding wide receiver and one of the most underrated receivers. Nobody talks about Tyreek Hill as a top wide receiver. When people talk about best receivers in the league, they say Julio Jones, they say DeAndre Hopkins, but they don't usually say Tyreek Hill, even though he should definitely be regarded as one of the top wide receivers. Just because, he's more of a burner and a speed guy doesn't mean he's not one of the top receivers in the NFL. He can go up there, he can moss people, he has huge ups, he has great hands, and he's a great route runner as well. But, yeah, sorry, just to get back to that, Willie Gay going to the Chiefs, he's incredibly fast, and I think what they wanted to do this draft is get fast on defense. L'Jarius Sneed, I think he ran a sub 4.40. I think we're just trying to get quick, and we're definitely going to have to get quick because the Oakland Raiders got Henry Ruggs, which was a huge surprise to me. I really did not expect Ruggs to go before CeeDee Lamb and to go before Jerry Jeudy, but one thing I will say with the Broncos getting Jerry Jeudy and the Raiders getting Henry Ruggs, yes, it might have been more wise to focus on the defense, but I think we can work with what we got, and putting up huge points on the board will serve us well. Tyrann Mathieu is still on the team, Frank Clark is still on the team, Chris Jones is still on the team, Derek Nottie, our D tackle, is a rising. Sort of not necessarily a star, but he's certainly improving and being very effective at his role. And I think the team is just fine where they are. Also, one thing I want to add, the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick, Patrick Mahomes, named him as the guy that he wanted, which is very, very cool. I think it was cool to see, that they had the quarterback in mind. It was supposedly Brett Veach, or Andy Reid, so I don't remember who off the top of my head, texted him and said, hey, we're approaching our pick, give us a name and we'll consider it. And he said Clyde, so I think it was a perfect fit. It's a perfect pick here. And I hope that it turns out very, very well. But overall, I was satisfied with the Chiefs draft. Was it the best possible draft that we could have had? Maybe not. Maybe they could have prioritized the defense with that first pick. But I give it a B+. I do really, really like it. I like it for fantasy football managers. I think the offense is going to be even more powerful. I don't think you have to worry about, shares being taken away from Tyreek or Travis Kelce. I think those guys are just going to be the same. But now the running back position has been upgraded. Of course, we're going to have to wait and see, make sure, this is not going to be a running back by committee. I truly believe that Clyde Edwards-Helaire can take over that backfield, because I don't think the talent is necessarily high in the backfield, even though there are several running backs in the running back room. He definitely has potential to be the number one on the team, and when you're a number one running back on a fantasy football team, that's just automatic value, right? So we'll see what happens, but overall, definitely satisfied with the Kansas City Chiefs draft. Sorry, guys, just had to go on that whole rant there about my team, but it's good for fantasy football. Look for the Chiefs, guys. Definitely able to draft their running backs now. You don't have to worry as much. Of course, I don't think, Clyde Edwards-Helaire will be an RB1 immediately, but he certainly has that potential. Now, we're running out of time here, so we are going to go into the break. But when we get back, guys, we're going to continue talking draft. We're going to continue talking about rookie values and see, who might be the most productive rookie out of all of these guys taken on offense. So stick around, guys, and we'll be right back after this short break.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Alrighty, welcome back, guys, to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Alright, guys, for this segment, I want to start talking about the rookies who were drafted on offense and just kind of talk about who I think might have the biggest impact on fantasy football coming into this next season. Now, of course, it's going to be impossible to predict, how these guys' careers are going to go, but we can talk about their immediate impact and whether or not you should be drafting them, where you should be drafting them, etc., etc. Now, excuse me, I want to start by talking about the first overall pick, Joe Burrow, quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, everybody knew that Joe Burrow was going to be selected first overall. I mean, there was, some rumors that maybe they might possibly trade this pick, but it really wasn't anything crazy. But Joe Burrow is coming into Cincinnati with A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, and John Ross at wide receiver right now. So I think, it's sort of like a Patrick Mahomes kind of situation where you come in with some serious weapons, and that makes the transition into the league much, much better. Not to mention, Joe Burrow has some mobility. He can tote the rock if he needs to. He's not just going to sit in the pocket, and that's good for fantasy football. The top fantasy football rookies, at the quarterback position usually are guys who can get it done with their legs and can score some touchdowns themselves for 6 points rather than throwing them for 4. Joe Burrow had an insane season in college, possibly the best that we've ever seen. He completed 76% of his passes, and he was only off target on 7.7% of those, according to ESPN. He posted a 94.9 total QBR during the 2019 season. It's absolutely phenomenal. And, like I said, he had 5 TDs and 368 rushing yards in college, so he definitely has some potential to tuck the ball and run and score some points. So I think, of course, when you go into a season with a rookie quarterback, you have to temper your expectations. We don't know how these things are going to go, so you don't just want to go ahead and say, oh, this guy's going to be QB1, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback as a rookie. But I certainly think that Joe Burrow, if he lives up to this hype, certainly has QB1 upside. You can sort of draft him as a QB2 kind of guy because of the weapons he has. Hopefully A.J. Green can come back healthy. He can play a full season of football. He hasn't played in so long, so there's guaranteed to be some rust. But he was a phenomenal wide receiver. Tyler Boyd is coming into his own, and John Ross can be a potentially lethal deep threat if he becomes a more complete receiver and gets his health together. Excuse me. Now, let's move on to the next quarterback selected, number 5 overall, Tua Tagovailoa for the Miami Dolphins. Now, guys, To me, I think this is going to be, the top quarterback coming out of this draft, so long as he stays healthy. Tua Tagovailoa is one of the best college football quarterbacks that we've ever seen, and unfortunately, it feels like when you say his name, when you talk about him, it feels like there's some negative vibe about him, and it's just because of his injury. And I think, a big issue is that people are sort of overlooking his talent and his ability, and his skills and, his excellent anticipatory throws, because, he has the potential to get severely hurt. It's unfortunate, but it's a reality. But I want to talk about this right here as if, we're going to assume that Tua Tagovailoa stays healthy. Now, the reason why I'm going to rate him lower for fantasy football this season than Joe Burrow is because I think that Tua Tagovailoa is not going to get the start immediately. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to start a couple games. He's going to do the Ryan Fitzmagic thing where he has a great game. Then he throws 4 picks next game and 3 picks the game after that. And they say, you know what? Let's try out Tua here. And then he starts, week 3 or 4 or so. So he's just going to miss out on fantasy points in that regard. But, when he comes in, I think he certainly could be a QB2 and definitely has QB1 upside like I spoke of with Joe Burrow. The only problem that I have is I suspect that Miami's not going to be letting Tua run the ball very much. I think they're going to be trying to keep him as safe as possible, sitting in the pocket, making him more, 100% a pocket passer, Tom Brady-esque, never running the ball only when it's dire and he, desperately has to escape pressure. But I think, he's going to be a guy that we see throwing the ball away a lot rather than tucking the ball and running to try and make a big play. So that sort of hampers his upside in fantasy football. However, with his accuracy, his efficiency, I believe he had the highest career efficiency ever in college football. His anticipatory throws, like I mentioned, he's a great all-around quarterback, and I think, he can make up for that lack of mobility with his pure raw skills. We have to remember they still have, Devontae Parker, who was an absolute stud. Mike Gesicki was coming into his own later on in the year, and I think, he's definitely going to be a risk. But he has a lot of upside and a lot of potential to be, one day an elite quarterback in the league. So we'll have to see what happens. But, of course, it's very, very hard to predict. Now, Justin Herbert to the Los Angeles Chargers, guys. This, to me, I really don't think he's going to have much, fantasy football impact. The Chargers were very adamant about Tyrod Taylor being their guy. Head coach Anthony Lynn really, really likes Tyrod Taylor, and I don't believe that they see him necessarily as a bridge quarterback at the moment. I think, they were talking about him. Tyrod's a quality starter in this league. He has the skills to be a quality starter. So I think, this is going to be a situation in which Tyrod Taylor is going to be starting unless he has a horrifically bad game. I don't believe that this is going to be, kind of like how it was in Cleveland when, everyone thought Baker should be starting and, you go up and you get this guy at number 1 and you're not starting him. It makes no sense. And then there's this weird tension and it ends up a mess. And Tyrod, eventually leaves town. I think this is going to be Tyrod's team for now. And should Tyrod do horrible, then they bring Justin Herbert in. But Justin Herbert, I think, is more of a guy they want to sit and sort of learn. But, of course, would I be surprised if Tyrod Taylor started playing terribly and Justin Herbert came in? No. Do I expect that to happen, though? I'm not sure. I think, there's a reason that the Los Angeles Chargers didn't make a run for Cam Newton, right? And I think, of course, they're thinking about the future, but I think they want a guy who's going to take care of the football. After dealing with Phillip Rivers and all of those turnovers, I think they want, Tyrod Taylor and his game-managing ability. And also, he's a bit of a mobile guy, too. He can move. So I think as of right now, that's Tyrod's team. I don't see Justin Herbert making a huge fantasy impact, but if he does get the start, I think, he could possibly be QB2. But I don't know. He definitely does not. He doesn't need to be drafted. He doesn't have as much upside as the other guys. So keep an eye on Justin Herbert in that situation there, but don't expect him to be something right out of the gate. All right, now I'm going to move on to some skill position guys here. Just because I know, Jordan Love's not going to be playing next season unless there's an injury. And, Jalen Hurts isn't going to be playing next season unless there's an injury. Jalen Hurts, just to touch on him quickly, people have talked about him maybe filling out sort of Taysom Hill role in that offense, sort of how, Taysom Hill would come in certain packages and he would, do the, zone read plays and he would run it or just take a deep shot down the field. That could possibly happen, but that's nothing to be, too excited about in regards to fantasy football. Now, number 12 selection was Henry Ruggs to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now this, I've mentioned already, was a surprise to me. I expected the Raiders to take Jerry Jeudy. To me, Jerry Jeudy is a very, very solid wide receiver, a great route runner, a little more complete than Henry Ruggs. But Henry Ruggs has the burners. It was pretty clear here. They wanted their own Tyreek Hill. He's also great after the catch. And if you can have your own Tyreek Hill, you're probably going to take that. I think definitely facing the Chiefs twice a year had a lot of influence on John Gruden here. And he's like, you know what? I'm tired of dealing with that guy. I need one of my own. They're sort of seeing now the Chiefs, all they do is just put a ton of points up on the board, and they don't need the elite defense. So maybe we can try and copy that as best we can. Now, I think that Henry Ruggs certainly has the possibility to be wide receiver 2 flex, but we'll have to see. Derek Carr is the quarterback there. He's not someone that we talk about as an elite guy, even though he did have a great year last year, but we'll have to see how it goes if he can remain consistent. But the reason I say that as well is that Tyrell Williams is still on that team. Hunter Renfrow was still, a considerable target for Derek Carr in the slot. And I think Henry Ruggs would be on the outside, that number 2 wide receiver with definitely some deep threat. But I think he might be a guy who's not too consistent in the beginning, but pops off huge plays here and there. Sort of like Mecole Hardman. If you guys can imagine that, I don't know, how many of you had Mecole or saw some Chiefs games. Sort of a guy who was inconsistent from week to week. He could score 20 on any given day, but a lot of times he only scored under 10. So that's where I see Henry Ruggs at the moment, but definitely could be a flex sort of guy. Now, I wanna get into another receiver, but we're running out of time here, so we'll take a short break, guys. When we get back, we'll pick right back up where we left off. I'll continue talking about rookies, who I think is gonna make the most impact, etc., etc. So enjoy the break, guys, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorites as well. Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, guys, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And we just left off, we're going to just continue talking about wide receivers. We left off talking about Henry Ruggs and the Raiders. That's going to be more of a flex guy, not a guy I see having, too much wide receiver 1 upside. Now, I loved Jerry Jeudy coming into this draft, and I wanted him to be selected as the first receiver off the board, and I would have loved him much more if he was selected by the Jets, a team where I could see him going there and being the best receiver, sort of taking over on being a very favorite target. But instead he went to the Broncos, and I think this seriously hurt a lot of his fantasy football stock, just because they already have Courtland Sutton. Jerry Jeudy figures to work mainly in the slot, which definitely could be very, very productive as well. However, Drew Lock is the quarterback, and I'm not necessarily sold on him just yet. I know Sam Darnold is no, Patrick Mahomes, but I think that Sam Darnold has, I think he's a better quarterback than Drew Lock. I'll just put it simply like that. I've also seen, Drew Lock have abysmal games. I've seen him have good games as well, but I just need to see more. And of course, with my lack of confidence in him, I'm going to have a lack of confidence in Jerry Jeudy to sort of break out as I believe that he can. However, that's not to say that I think you shouldn't draft him. I think he has, a lot of potential. If Drew Lock should come into his own and be a solid starting quarterback, he certainly has, high-end wide receiver 2 and, wide receiver 1 upside. But I think it's going to be a big risk. One, because Drew Lock is the quarterback, like I've said 1,000 times, but also because that team does run the ball a lot. Now, they have Phillip Lindsay there. Melvin Gordon is there now, and I figure they're going to have that sort of 1-2 punch running style attack. And, with a guy like Drew Lock, inexperienced guy, not too good, he's going to be dumping the ball off a lot to running backs. So while Jerry Jeudy, I think, is an amazing talent, and he has a lot of potential down the road, I think he needs a little bit better of a quarterback, and I think right now he's going to be a guy that I draft for, sort of flex consideration. Excuse me, and a guy that I'm stashing to see if, he might explode onto the scene, might be a favorite target for Drew Lock. But as of right now, Drew Lock leaves a lot to be desired, so we'll have to see what happens with him, unfortunately. Now, CeeDee Lamb to the Dallas Cowboys. This is another guy where he's very, very talented, has a lot of big play potential, but he ended up on a team that might not be ideal for fantasy football. Now, I've said this before, Dallas already has Amari Cooper. Dallas already has Michael Gallup. Certainly is an upgrade from Randall Cobb, I believe, having CeeDee Lamb, but it's going to be very, very hard, I think, to share all of those targets between those three. Never mind the fact that Ezekiel Elliott is still on this team, and this team is going to be running the football. Ezekiel Elliott is outstanding, and he also takes targets in the pass game. So to me right now, these wide receivers are sort of looking like, these are guys we're not going to be drafting with, crazy excitement in the earlier rounds. Like, all of these wide receivers drafted in the first round are going to be, later round kind of guys, even though, they were elite talents coming out of college. They're going to be flex guys, and guys we'll see. They'll have big games here and there, but it's not going to be a consistent wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 kind of, thing. But, I mean, they have the talent and the potential to be those kinds of players, but in the systems that they're in at the moment, they figure to be flex kind of guys, low-end wide receiver, 2 or 3 kind of guys. So, unfortunately, CeeDee Lamb, great receiver, but goes into a crowded wide receiver room. So, of course, all these guys have the upside to be, potential superstars. But at this current point in time, we'll have to see what happens, how they develop in their systems, and how the teams decide to use them. So as of right now, these guys are looking more like, you're going to draft him to be a flex with the potential to possibly break out. So just think of them all like that. Now, Jalen Reagor of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this one is sort of tricky because I didn't necessarily agree with a pick when it happened. But if I had to say, I believe that Jalen Reagor right now is figuring to be the wide receiver 3 on the team. I don't know what's happening with Alshon Jeffrey. I don't know if he's going to get traded or if he's going to get cut. I really believed he was going to be traded during the draft or way sooner, and it hasn't happened yet. Definitely has to do with his salary. But, Jalen Reagor, for me, he gets, he gets a boost if Alshon Jeffrey's not on the team. But as of right now, he's just like the other guys. I don't think he has as much upside as the other guys, so that's my one thing. I think Jalen Reagor right now is going to be a flex, and he'll be a flex all season. I don't know if he has the upside to burst onto the scene, but as the top fantasy football wide receiver, I think, with Deshaun Jackson still in the Eagles, Alshon Jeffrey still in the Eagles, it would take Alshon leaving for Jalen Reagor to be bumped up to have any upside to be, maybe a wide receiver 2. But of course, we'll have to see what happens. Deshaun Jackson was hurt last season. It seems like the Eagles are cursed. People are getting injured left and right. If Jalen Reagor ends up being the only receiver left on the squad, then certainly he's going to have tremendous upside because Carson Wentz is going to feed him the ball. But as of right now, it's a guy you're going to be drafting really, really late. Maybe not even drafting at all unless you're an Eagles fan. So we'll see what happens there. Now, Justin Jefferson to the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I like this one because he's basically a replacement for Stephon Diggs. So if you like Stephon Diggs in fantasy football, you can look at Justin Jefferson to have that kind of upside. Not that Stephon Diggs was a, huge fantasy football star, but, Justin Jefferson could be a top 25 guy for sure. He ran a 4.43 40-yard dash, so he has the speed, he has the size, and he can definitely go up and get the ball. He had 111 receptions at LSU, and I think, if you're playing PPR guys, he's going to be a guy that you want to look at a lot. I think he's going to get a ton of targets and a ton of catches. He might not necessarily be having a ton of yards and touchdowns every game, but I think he's going to thrive being a sort of possession-style receiver and having a ton of catches, helping open up Adam Thielen as well. I think this is a really good pickup here because, it just basically replaces the Stephon Diggs portion of that combo of Thielen and Diggs, while also having a guy who wants to be on the team and is not being a toxic kind of person in the locker room. I think he's of course, like I said, with everyone else, he's probably going to be a flex kind of start, but he has upside. The reason I say that as well is, I am talking him up and he's a great receiver and all that. It's because Minnesota runs the ball a ton. So of course, that just means less value at the wide receiver position there. But if he's catching a ton of balls, catching a lot of first downs, going to be a big guy going up, grabbing the ball, every catch is a point. So we like that in fantasy football. Now, Brandon Ayuk went to the San Francisco 49ers at pick number 25. Unfortunately for him, I don't see much fantasy value at the moment. And this is because, you guys saw how much San Francisco runs the ball. They run the ball a ton. George Kittle is their top guy. Also, Deebo Samuel is going to be, targeted more than Brandon Ayuk. Kendrick Bourne was a good wide receiver as well last season. I think it's going to take a while for Brandon Ayuk to sort of earn his spot, on this offense, getting considerable targets. I think he's very talented. I think, he was a great run after the catch kind of guy, and I think, that fits their offense as well. But, there are just several talented guys on this roster, and they run the ball so darn much that I just don't see much value in taking him. I think he's a guy who's going to stay on the board to not even be drafted, and you can pick him up off the waiver wires should he, get some value. But unfortunately, I think the system that he's in right now, it's great, they're getting a talented player, but for fantasy football, not sure how much value he has. Of course, Jordan Love went to the Packers at 26, but, he's not going to be playing next season. Well, hopefully for Aaron Rodgers, he won't be. But the last guy I want to go over here, he's the last pick of the first round, is Clyde Edwards-Helaire to the Kansas City Chiefs. And, of course, I talked about him already, guys. But I figure that, he probably has, out of these guys I've already spoken about, the biggest potential to be a breakout star in fantasy football. And it's just because, plain and simple, he's in such a prolific passing offense, and he's a pass-catching running back. So, he's basically going to be having that wide receiver role while also toting the rock. If he can eclipse 500 yards, which is basically what the top rusher rushed for in Kansas City last season, then he figures to be a pretty good starter, because that means he's going to be getting, those 500 yards with several rushing touchdowns, and I can bet he's going to have over 30 or 40 receptions with receiving touchdowns and receiving yards to complement those as well. God forbid, I wouldn't wish injury upon anyone, but should injury happen to Damian Williams, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be leading that backfield, having a ton of upside, and I don't think he's going to be sharing the backfield a lot, especially because of this, just based off of the love that they've shown for him already and how highly they've spoken of him. Brett Veach has said, we see this guy as a franchise running back. Franchise running backs don't share the backfield. We've seen it. Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, Christian McCaffrey. Those guys don't share a backfield. So when your GM says that about you, you better be ready to take on a huge role, be an every down kind of guy. And I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire with his pass catching, is going to be a great fantasy football running back. And I think he has the potential, excuse me, guys, to be in the top 20 certainly in his rookie campaign. So look out for him. Definitely could be sort of a flex option for you guys if you like running backs at the flex, and can be even an RB2 kind of running back later down the line. So with that, guys, we're going to go into our break here and then go into our final segment, and then we'll let you go on. So stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back after this short break.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Alrighty guys, welcome back as we enter our final segment here, and today I'm actually going to be switching it up a bit, and I'm not going to do wishes today. I'm actually going to finish this show today with some in other news, and that's because reports have come out that the New Orleans Saints will be signing Jameis Winston to a 1-year deal. Now, if you've been listening, you know I've talked about Jameis Winston and my wish for him to just sign with a team who could use his services as a, sort of veteran starter, maybe as a bridge quarterback. I understand that he's thrown a ton of picks, but he was reportedly getting LASIK eye surgery to help his vision. And I also did mention that I wanted him to stay with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I didn't want them to get Brady for his sake, because I felt that if he ever went somewhere else, it would be as a backup. Well, that's what he sort of has fallen into at this point, and I get it. It's not like he doesn't deserve that sort of role, but they're signing him. Sources told Yahoo Sports that Winston's signing won't guarantee him the backup job behind starter Drew Brees. Instead, the best case scenario for Winston may ultimately be competing for the number 2 quarterback spot with Taysom Hill, who the Saints retained this offseason via a first-round tender offer, suggesting that Jameis Winston will have an opportunity to be the heir apparent to Brees as soon as 2021. Now, while I don't love the fact that Winston's now going to be a backup quarterback, because that's basically, we're losing out on even though he turns the ball over a ton, he was a top-tier fantasy football quarterback. So we're losing out on that. However, I do like the potential for Winston to take over as the Saints starting quarterback after Drew Brees eventually retires. Now, sitting out a year could help him, especially, being behind a guy like Drew Brees. Jameis Winston came into the league, and he didn't sit behind anyone for a number of years. He just kind of, he was the guy. So I think, maybe sitting behind Drew Brees, learning how to take care of the football. Drew Brees knows he's on the way out. So this is not like a situation where, you got a guy in Aaron Rodgers who believes he has several years left, several quality years left, and doesn't want to be replaced. Drew Brees knows that this is his last ride, right? So he's probably going to want to help out the organization that has, been a part of his life for so long and is so very close to him. So I think, Drew Brees could mentor Jameis Winston a bit, and help him out. Jameis Winston, I'll keep saying it, he threw for a league-high 5,109 yards. You can't be bad and do that. I don't know, what is to blame for the interception problems. I don't know if it's his vision. I don't know if it's just weird decision-making that season. But the 30 interceptions are unforgivable, but the guy has talent as a thrower. So I like this signing by the New Orleans Saints. I understand, though, that their quarterback room is a bit crowded with Taysom Hill, and I believe they just drafted a rookie quarterback. But I like the competition it brings for the backup position for the heir apparent to Drew Brees, and I like the fact that they took a shot on a guy who they see has potential to be, a quality starting quarterback so long as they limit his turnovers. I think Jameis Winston is 100% worth being a project for coaches, and I really like this signing here. For free agents, for fantasy football guys, this isn't going to do much. He's not going to be playing anytime soon, and I highly doubt he's going to be the quarterback that they bring in for the Taysom Hill packages. Taysom Hill is more athletic than Jameis Winston is. I believe he's a bit quicker, and I think they'll just stick to that. No immediate impact for fantasy football, but it was just a story that I wanted to talk about. Definitely happy for Jameis Winston as he finds a spot, but that brings me now to sort of ask why Cam Newton is still on the market. It's sort of frustrating at this point in time because I think that Cam Newton has more upside right now for fantasy football than Jameis Winston, yet, he is not on a team yet. At this point, I have no clue where Cam Newton's going to go. I figured he might have signed with a team before the draft. The draft is over. He's still not with a team. Still not with the Patriots, as some may have predicted. And I'm not really sure what's going to happen with Cam Newton. However, guys, if he goes to a team and is a starting quarterback, expect him to be fantasy relevant. I do think he'll be at least a top 15 kind of quarterback. I believe he'll come back healthy. And he'll be able to run the football, be that mobile guy he was. He won't be the same, MVP Cam Newton, but I think he's going to come back hungry. He's going to come back with a vengeance of sorts, and really want to prove himself. So definitely, I'm going to be keeping an eye on Cam Newton. It's kind of sad. It's unfortunate, but it is reality. One other thing I wanted to talk about, guys, I just something I want to touch on here to wrap up. Lamar Jackson is the cover athlete for Madden 21. So I do just want to congratulate Lamar Jackson on being the cover athlete. And guys, if any of you are superstitious, the Madden curse is a thing, man. The Madden curse is a real thing. Of course, I don't believe, I'm not telling you guys that it's real, but I believe that there are really, really strange coincidences after an athlete is on the cover of Madden. People say that Patrick Mahomes, he defeated the curse, which I believe he kind of did. But remember, he did dislocate his knee the year after he was on the cover for Madden. And I'll tell you what, when the cover was revealed last year during the draft, I knew it was going to be Pat Mahomes because it just felt, 50 touchdowns, 5,000 yards. It sort of felt like they had to. I figured maybe it could be Drew Brees. But, once they showed it was him, man, I got worried because honestly, guys, the Madden curse, man, sometimes it just, the coincidences start to pile on top of each other. So I'm just hoping for Lamar. Nothing bad happens to him. He's a mobile guy. And I know it sounds silly to talk about, but man, cover athletes have a terrible time usually in the years or year after they're on the cover of Madden. So congratulations to Lamar, and hopefully the curse works out best for him. Kind of like how it worked out for Mahomes, where he got hurt, but he won a chip. So with that, guys, we're gonna end the show. As always, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I want to ask that you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all social media, guys. Comment below. Let us know what we're doing bad. Let us know what we're doing good, because that always helps us. Other than that, guys, I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying healthy. Hope you're staying sane. And with that, guys, have a good night. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.